Whistleblowing website WikiLeaks has released Edward Snowden's statement to human rights groups here in Moscow. In it, the former NSA contractor asks for assistance in getting asylum in Russia until he can legally travel to Latin America. He underlined that his asylum status is official after Venezuela provided him with refuge, but that unlawful threats from the US makes it impossible for him to get there. He also condemned Western European states willing to act outside the law to appease the US. And he stressed he was not in partnership with any foreign government or seeking to enrich himself. He insisted he is acting solely out of conviction that the public should know about America's unlawful spying activities. Well, now let's go live to Washington, and where we'll join our correspondent, Gana Chichikan, and she has the latest from the official reaction there. Gana, in Washington, tell us, what has the US said about the latest developments so far?
Well, Bill, the White House calls for Russia, quote, not to provide Edward Snowden with a propaganda platform. The president's press secretary referred to President Putin's statement that Snowden had to stop harming the interests of the United States if he wanted to stay in Russia. Now, as far as how Edward Snowden views the interests of the United States, that's a different matter. He doesn't think he's harming, he thinks he's helping his country. Anyway, it should not be a secret to the U.S. that Putin is not happy to deal with the Snowden situation, and he would rather have him leave the country as soon as possible, as the Russian president has said himself on several occasions. Now, about the possible harm to the U.S.-Russia relations, which President Putin is eager to avoid, here's what what President Obama's press secretary said about that.
Our position also remains that we don't believe this should, and we don't want it to do harm to our important relationship with Russia, and we continue to discuss with Russia our strongly held view that there is absolute legal justification for him to be expelled, for him to be returned to the United States, to face the charges that have been brought against him for the unauthorized leaking of classified information.
Now, as far as the legal justification for expelling Edward Snowden, Russia has a different take on it. First of all, there is no extradition treaty. Second of all, Russia doesn't extradite to countries that have the death penalty. And also, there are reasons to see Snowden as a political refugee, as a political asylum seeker, because he argues that he broke his secrecy obligations, his contract, if you will, to expose the government's wrongdoings. Now, whatever Russians might think about Snowden at the moment, according to the most recent polls, 55% of Americans view Snowden as a whistleblower, and only 34% consider him a traitor. The Obama administration tries whistleblowers as spies. Snowden is wanted on espionage charges, and whistleblowers in the U.S. potentially risk the death penalty. The U.S. has certainly gone a long way from the days of Daniel Ellsberg and his Pentagon Papers, but it's interesting how the public opinion evolved just in the last 3 years. 3 years ago, 25% of the public said the government's anti-terrorism policies have gone too far in restricting the average person's civil liberties. Now, it's 45%. So you see a jump from 25% to 45% just within the last 3 years. And that's a significant shift in public opinion. One can argue that people would not oppose something they heard nothing about. So with knowledge comes opposition. Perhaps not surprisingly, the U.S. government is going to great lengths so that the public knows as little as possible about these programs.